Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, let's disconnect your income. Thank you for joining me at the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser. If I have not had a chance to introduce myself yet to you and you happen to be new to this channel or this is the first episode that you're listening to, hey, thank you so much for joining me. I very much appreciate the support. Likes, comments, and subscribes are always fantastic. Helps me spread the word and get some amazing tips out to people that may be struggling right now. That may be you, that may be your neighbor, that may be a business associate of yours. Please help me spread the message so that they don't have to needlessly struggle or at least be alone in their struggles. It's something that we are passionate about here at Kale Houser Leadership as we continue to grow and expand our presence in our company and the ability of us to help and serve our ideal clients, which are small business owners, people that have this big dream, but they maybe don't have all the tactics, the education, the mentorship in order to know how to avoid some of the landmines and barriers that are out there waiting for them, at least to even be able to see them, let alone know how to tackle them and get over them. And today is one of those things. Today is, as I'd mentioned, today we're talking about disconnecting your income. And you'll be going like, what the heck does disconnecting your income mean? And it can mean a couple things, but we are talking about disconnecting your income generation from your time. We all kind of understand that the classic business model of what is common in America is that we trade our time for some form of pay, for a paycheck. We trade hours for a wage. This may be in the form of salary, like, hey, you're expected to show up for a minimum of 40, but really we're going to work you 60 to 70 to 80 for this set amount of salary. But now we can include bonuses and all those types of things that will additionally compensate you. But your base salary is this, no matter how many hours you work. But the more common, and certainly in middle America, the more common is, hey, I'm going to pay you $15 an hour. I'm going to pay you 20. I'm going to pay you 50, 100, 1,000, whatever the number is. You only get paid when you show up and clock in. You only get paid when you do the work. Your time is directly connected to your income. And as I talk about this concept of disconnecting your income, and what I mean by that is, how do you disconnect your ability, your capability, the processes you have in place that generate income, the things you do to make money, earn revenue, gather capital? How do you disconnect that, disassociate that with your time to where you no longer have to show up at the office? You no longer have to be the one hitting the stamp, signing the checks, whatever that is, that time restraint that most people have in order to get wages. How do you transition out of that? And that is one of the big keys of what differentiates people that are successful and happy. And we kind of see they live these ideal lives and they're, that family across the street that's always on vacation, or they're doing things with their family. They're going to the lake on the weekend or even during the middle of the week. Like, how do you do that? It's not even a holiday weekend or Christmas or anything like that. Those people have learned how to disconnect their time to money, to where they are making money no matter their direct input or not. Now, certainly they have done things leading up to this, because more than likely you're not right off the bat of this, right? Because that would be the ultimate magic formula, is figuring out how do I make money for doing nothing. But there are things you can do to get to that point. Certainly residual income. You can become a massive property manager to where you've hired out all the things that need to be done in the form of accounting and advertising and leasing and maintenance, all those things, to where now you literally can sit back and do nothing other than you're the one that, pays the insurance and your name is on the building and you get paid for that. That is kind of the ultimate disconnect, that you've got this income in perpetuity, perpetualness, whatever that word is, to the point where you can do nothing. You have completely disconnected your time from your income. Now, most of us are not at that point. There are things you can do to steadily and slowly get there. You can be a real estate investor. I would argue that that is probably the number one way that most people get to that point, is they do some sort of real estate investment that is getting them that monthly recurring thing without putting in additional time, because they've gotten to the point where they can hire out and build this team in order to handle it for them. And they are simply now the owner, the visionary, the one that continually looks to how to grow and expand. But there are other things you can do as well. And this is what I really want to encourage you to do as you look at your industry and how you are setting your business up. Are you setting it up to where you're forging your own shackles? Are you setting it up with every decision you make and every project you take on as one more link in the chain that is really just pinning you to the wall? Or are you setting it up to where you're removing those links? That every time that chain gets, in the form of time, gets a little bit shorter to where it ultimately disappears and comes off? Are you setting it up to where you can hand over the reins of the business to somebody else, and you've set it up in such a manner that you can still go on living your lifestyle? You still go on being the largest shareholder. You can still go on getting the paycheck and the proceeds from the business in the form of that residual income. Because one is the ideal. One is when you retire, quote unquote retire, stop working, you don't have to worry about your income, or you don't have to change your lifestyle to all of a sudden match your reduced income. This is something that I always found so fascinating, and I will 100% admit that I fell into this category. I joined the military at a relatively young age, but I was older than most because I had, done some college, and Liz and I had been married for quite a few years already, and I was older, quote unquote older, in comparison to most of the 18 and 19-year-olds that were in my basic training class when I joined, and certainly people of my similar rank at the time. But I wholeheartedly and foolishly bit off on this concept of, man, you work 20 years and you're going to get the pension for the rest of your life. You're going to be set up. You will not have a care in the world. And to be honest, the first time that little lie of a bubble, and it wasn't even a lie because it wasn't like they were actively pushing it. It was just kind of this general feeling, and they didn't do anything to discourage it. But the first time is when, and I forget where, I know I was in Florida. I was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base, and I met this chief, and I forget where it was at, maybe at church or something. But he had literally just retired as an E9 in the Air Force, like a chief. So that's the highest an enlisted can go. And there are certainly levels to E9s, right? Command chiefs and like chief of the Air Force type people. But he was a, I guess, quote unquote, run of the mill chief. Like he wasn't a command chief or anything like that. But he had spent, 24, 25 years in the Air Force, serving his country and doing all these things and sacrificing. And he's like, yeah, like I've got, kids that are getting ready to go to college or are in college. Like all of a sudden my paycheck went to half. So he was working full time. He had to go out and get a full-time job, not because he wanted to, because he's like, oh, I'm bored just sitting at home doing nothing. Like you can only fish so much. It was because he absolutely had to. He had done nothing to set up his life to be able to live in the manner he wanted to without generating and trading his time for income. He had done nothing to disconnect his time from his income. Now, certainly he had to a degree. If he wanted to not pay for his kids' college, if he wanted to not continue to live in the same house he had been living in because he was making double what he was, the previous month than what he was now on his retirement, because it now went to half, actually less than half. Because the thing they don't tell you in the military, at least overtly, you kind of figure it out, is that in the military, you've got your base pay. So that's what you can go online and look up all the charts for rank by rank and year, how much your base pay is. But then you've got your additional, like your housing allowance, your sustenance allowance, if you get flight pay, dive pay, language pay, all these different things that you can add to it. Well, it's not 50% of whatever you were making in the military at your 20-year mark. It's 50% of only your base pay. Does that make sense? So you might be, for easy numbers, your base pay maybe was $5,000 a month by that point. But your BAH was $2,500 a month. And that's different by location. Obviously, you get more housing allowance in Houston than you do in, random Louisiana type thing. So maybe you got your $5,000, now you're $2,500, and then say you're a couple $100, $700 for flight pay. So now you're at a little over $8,000 a month that you're making, or more, certainly more. But you don't get half of that $8,000. Well, the housing allowance and the flight pay, all that goes away. Now you get half of the base pay, the $5,000. So you go from a just over $8,000 a month check to a $2,500 a month check. How is that at all living the life you want? How is that a dream retirement? And the reality is it's not. And most people don't understand that. Now, this is no longer the case. The military, the DoD in general, has switched to a 401k type of scenario, which I think is even worse. Mainly because of our economy sucks, and that directly is an impact on people's pensions, and as we're seeing. But the military specifically, and in general, we do not do a good job of figuring out how to disconnect our time from our income. And I'm using this as an example because that chief, as wise and as good and as awesome of a guy he was and good at his job as being a chief and his Air Force career and all the sacrifices he had made, he went to a fraction to where he had to adjust his lifestyle and go out and continue to work and get another job in order just to stay at that same level. And that's not the ideal. As we switch this into the business sense, how are you doing that? Again, are there things you're doing now to where, yeah, maybe not next month, maybe not next year, but in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, will you be at the point to where your income is so disconnected from your time that you can actually live the life you want in the manner you want, where you want, terms, vacations, all those things, right? If you want to spend it golfing, you can do that. If you want to stay working just because that's what you enjoy doing, you can do that. But if somebody gets sick, you don't have to worry about taking time off. Does that make sense? And this is a critical key to any business, especially if you are the business owner. You need to have, one, an exit strategy, but two, how does that fit into your overall plan of being able to disconnect your time from your income? So it's something seriously to consider. And there are clues that are left of how, like I said, are you shackling yourself to the wall, or are you starting to loosen those shackles to where you'll eventually be able to walk wherever you want instead of having to trade that time for money? A little bit deeper subject. I hope it makes sense to you. I hope it's finding you in a position where you can really give this some thought and some advanced planning. And it may be that you have to, make some sacrifices in order to get to that future state, that future disconnect. But I would highly, 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 highly encourage you to start looking at that, because there is a point where it is too late. It is a point where, through circumstance, whether health, economy, whatever, dumb luck, that you may not be able to trade time for income anymore. And then what? Then what do you do? Which is kind of, what most everybody operates on, I would argue, in the workforce today. Don't let that be your business. Figure out how to get out of that and shed those shackles to the point you are absolutely disconnected, that if you don't work another day in your life, your income and the income requirements for the lifestyle that you want continue perpetually. Whatever that word is, in perpetuity. You get what I mean. Does it make sense? All right, probably not. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed my complete lack of understanding of the English language as I tried to espouse this to you. And I hope this makes sense. Make sure you give this some serious thought. If you need help with it, shoot me a message, Kale at Kale Houser Leadership. Look forward to talking to you no matter where you're at in the world. Have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.